I never meant to become her shadow. 2 years ago, I walked into her hospital room with nothing but a nursing certificate and an ego bruised by a world that never thought I'd amount to much. Now I can't remember what life felt like before Victoria Hale, my patient, my employer, my personal haunting. They call her the Iron Widow behind closed doors, though no one says it to her paralyzed face. Even motionless, she commands an entire skyscraper of trembling executives. I'm the only one who's seen her cry, but never for me, never for us, only for what the accident stole, her empire on high heels and the delicious terror she inspired in boardrooms. Sometimes when the night drags me to the edge of sleep on that leather couch beside her bed, I wonder if I should hate her for dragging my ambition through her broken world, for making me her confessor, her ghost limb, for making me believe, in the hush between beeping machines and her raspy whispers, that I mattered. But I do hate someone. Ethan Clark, the man who left me for a promotion in Boston before Victoria's accident, chained me to her bedside. I hadn't heard his voice in years, until last week, when I caught it crackling through her phone while I changed her IV bag. He called her darling. She laughed. The IV dripped faster. The needle trembled against her vein. I'm not naive. Victoria can't walk, but her reach slithers through every corridor of my life. She knew Ethan was my ghost. She dangled him close enough to choke me. It worked. I'm back where I swore I'd never be, questioning if I'm just the help or the fool. Still, there's something about her eyes lately. The way they track me when she thinks I'm not watching. The way she flinches when I touch her hand to reposition her in bed. She fears losing me more than she fears another spinal surgery. She fears my resentment more than she fears death. I could leave. I could be free tonight, disappear into the city fog, and take what little is left of my pride. But freedom tastes like cardboard after her. She rewired me, broke the old scaffolding of who I was. Now I am this, a man addicted to a woman who cannot hold him, yet holds every string that binds him to his own rage. Tomorrow I'm going to propose to Ethan. She doesn't know that yet. Neither does he. They'll both think it's about forgiveness, about old wounds healing under the antiseptic glow of hospital lights. But it's not. It's about something uglier and something clean. This time, they won't get to decide what I become. If you asked anyone at Hale Enterprises what Victoria fears most, they'd say losing control. They'd be wrong. What Victoria fears most is being pitied. To her, pity is worse than death. Maybe that's why she keeps me so close. I'm the only secret she can't buy or blackmail into silence. 2 nights after I decided to ruin them both, I wheeled her into the sunroom at dawn. It's her ritual, watching the city stretch awake while she sits caged in her custom wheelchair, silk robe draped over bones that once dominated shareholders twice her size. I brought her coffee she couldn't sip on her own, so I held the cup to her lips while pretending not to notice the tremor in my hand. "Are you angry with me, Samuel?" she asked, voice soft, but threaded with that steel edge she saves for gutting traitors in board meetings. I smiled the same loyal smile I'd perfected over 2 years. "Why would I be?" She narrowed her eyes that once made a Fortune 500 CEO resign mid-quarter. Even paralyzed, they stripped me bare. "I heard you on the phone. You spoke with Ethan." She always knows. The truth is, I didn't call him. He called me the night before. His number blinked on my phone at 1:12 a.m. like a dare. I answered because I'm still weak enough to want his apology, but he didn't give me that. Instead, he asked if I was still taking care of Her Highness. He laughed when I said yes. Then he asked if she still moans my name in her sleep. Victoria sipped my silence like fine wine. She knew. She orchestrated it. A well-timed call to rip open an old wound just wide enough for her to crawl inside and make a nest. "I thought you wanted me to forgive him," I said carefully. "I wanted you to see who deserves your loyalty," she countered. That's Victoria's favorite word, loyalty. She bleeds people dry and calls it devotion. But underneath her regal cruelty is a rotting truth. She can't stand that she depends on me, a man she would have fired for a single typo if she could still lift her finger to point. I pushed her chair closer to the window, pretending the city skyline fascinated me more than her knotted hands in her lap. "You don't trust me anymore," she scoffed. "Don't flatter yourself. I don't trust anyone. That's why I survived." It should have hurt, but it didn't, because survival is all either of us has left. Her body betrays her every minute. My heart betrays me every time I remember Ethan's mouth on my neck, lying about forever while I signed student loan checks to follow him anywhere. The betrayal is a circle now. Victoria used Ethan to keep me hers. Ethan wants Victoria's power to make himself relevant again. And I want something none of them suspect. I want to watch them choke on the same helplessness they fed me for years. So I said what she wanted to hear. "I'm yours, Victoria." She closed her eyes as if that lie was a balm against the throbbing truth she refused to face. I left her there to bask in her illusion while I slipped my phone from my pocket and texted Ethan. "Meet me tonight. We need to talk." Ethan picked a bar he knew I hated. Too loud, too neon, too many shallow strangers pressing close for overpriced gin and a selfie with anyone who looked richer than they were. Perfect camouflage for treachery. He was already 2 drinks deep when I slid into the cracked leather booth. "Sammy boy, you look good." He smirked, that same crooked smirk that used to unlace every argument between us in under a minute. "Cut the crap, Ethan. You called me. So say what you want." He leaned forward, breath soaked in whiskey and a hint of desperation. "I want to come back. To you. To the city. To her empire." So there it was. He didn't bother to hide it behind pretty words this time. He wanted Victoria's money. And me, as his emotional insurance policy, the loyal nurse to vouch for his reformed heart. Why now, I asked, though I already knew. Victoria's health was failing in secret. Another infection. Another surgery she might not survive. And if she died, the Hale dynasty needed a king to sit on her rusted throne. Ethan's smile faltered. For once, honesty cracked through the slime. "I miss you, Sam. I shouldn't have left you in Boston. I know that now. I should have punched him. I should have left." But instead I laughed, a harsh, broken bark that turned heads at the bar. He reached for my hand. I let him. "Do you love her?" I asked. He shook his head instantly. "Too fast. Too rehearsed." "Of course not. She's a cripple with a crown. I love you." "Perfect." I squeezed his hand so tightly he winced. "Good. Then marry me." The words stunned even me. They dropped between us, heavy with the ghosts of every night I'd spent alone, while he built a future without me. Now he looked at me like I was insane. "Sam, what the hell?" "I want everyone to see it. United States. Together. Victoria will see it too. She'll know she can't control me anymore." His eyes widened as my smile turned savage. I leaned closer, so only he could hear the venom in my whisper. "And when she sees it, she'll know what betrayal tastes like." Ethan's hand trembled in mine. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just stared. And I knew I had him exactly where I wanted him. 2 years ago, I was the abandoned fool begging for scraps of affection. Tonight, I am the architect of a collapse so intimate, it will taste like a kiss. Victoria taught me well. Ethan taught me pain. I will teach them both what I've become. I never believed people change. Not really. They just get better at acting out the version of themselves the world wants. For 2 years, I played the devoted caretaker because Victoria needed me to. For 5 years before that, I played the perfect boyfriend because Ethan wanted my loyalty more than my love. Now I'm neither of those men. I'm the one pulling the curtain. Ethan moved into my apartment 3 days after our conversation at the bar. He called it a fresh start. He brought his boxes of tailored suits, a bottle of cheap champagne, and that same slippery smile he used when he first asked me out at a college library all those years ago. At night, he wraps himself around me like a prayer he hopes I'll believe again. By day, he visits Victoria under the guise of reconciling old business. I watch them through the glass wall of her sunroom. She thinks I don't see. She doesn't know I planted a voice recorder in the drawer next to her morphine vials. They think they are circling each other like apex predators. They don't realize I am the soil feeding their roots poison. Yesterday, while Ethan was busy charming her day nurse with fake stories about how deeply Victoria always trusted him. I sat by her bedside. She was drowsy from medication, but her eyes flickered open when my fingers brushed her hair back from her forehead. "You look tired, Victoria." Her lips cracked into a half smile. "I dreamed of walking again. I always do. Then I wake up and realize my own legs hate me." I swallowed the sympathy she despised and forced my voice to drip with soft betrayal instead. "I wish you'd let me help you more. You hide so much from me." Her pupils tightened. Even drugged, she heard the quiet accusation. "You help me enough, Samuel. You're the only one I trust." A lie, but for once, I let it stand. I kissed her forehead and she closed her eyes again, vulnerable for the first time in months. I pressed my lips against her temple and whispered, so low she'd think it was a dream, "Soon you'll know what I really am." She shifted, a faint moan catching in her throat. She didn't wake. I told Ethan the next day I wanted to host an engagement dinner. Just the three of us. Me, him, and Victoria. He balked, of course, said she wouldn't agree to see us as a couple. He didn't realize how little that mattered now. "It's not about her blessing," I said, standing behind him while he poured wine into our only clean glass. "It's about showing her that I'm not hers anymore." He turned to face me, glass balanced on his palm. "Sam, why do you care so much? She's dying. Let it go." I pushed the glass aside and trapped his face in my hands. I studied him. Every freckle, every lie etched in the lines near his eyes. I needed to see him clearly because soon he'd only be another memory I wouldn't mourn. "I care because you and she taught me the cost of trusting someone. Now you're both going to pay interest." His lips parted in a half-protest. I kissed him hard enough to steal the breath from his lungs. He tasted like cheap wine and a ruined future. The engagement dinner was my masterpiece. I arranged for Victoria's personal chef to cook a menu of her favorites, all dishes she could no longer chew properly without assistance. I had the nurses dress her in her old power suits, custom tailored to hide the wasted muscle and bed sores. I wheeled her into her own private dining room, a shrine to the goddess she used to be. She hated it. I saw it in her stiff jaw, the way her eyes darted to Ethan as if begging him to take control of the charade. Ethan, spineless as ever, raised his champagne flute. "To second chances." I clinked mine against his, then bent to Victoria's level and lifted her glass for her. She didn't drink, of course. I made sure of that. But I held it steady at her lips so she could taste the ghost of a life she'd never reclaim. "To endings," I murmured. Only she heard it. Her pupils dilated, black, swallowing gray. When dinner was cleared, and Ethan was pretending to be interested in the framed photos of Victoria's father shaking hands with presidents, I knelt beside her wheelchair. "I know about the offshore accounts," I said softly. Her eyes snapped to mine, fury briefly overpowering the tranquilizer drip. "I know you wired Ethan a gift to come back. I know you wanted him here to keep me here." She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. I pressed a finger to her lips. "I don't care about the money. I care that you thought I'd never see you for what you are. You're a queen rotting on her throne, and you dragged me down with you." I stood, brushed her hair back again, like a dutiful lover. "I'm leaving with him, and when I do, your kingdom will eat itself alive." She tried to lunge at me. Her body betrayed her, as it always does. The only sound was the faint hiss of the oxygen pump, mocking her rage. Afterward, Ethan pulled me into the guest bedroom he'd claimed as his. He smelled like her expensive cologne, probably sprayed it on before the dinner to feel like a man in her world again. "Jesus, Sam, did you have to humiliate her like that? She's sick." I laughed against his collarbone. "You never cared about her health. Don't pretend now." He flinched but didn't deny it. He only whispered against my temple, "Promise me we're leaving tonight. Just you and me. No more ghosts." I stared at the ceiling while his fingers traced old scars on my chest. No more ghosts. He was my last one. "Pack your bags," I said. "I'll handle the rest." But I didn't pack. I went to Victoria's private study instead, keys lifted from her nightstand weeks ago when she thought I was changing her sheets. Inside, the walls were lined with file cabinets of blackmail, contracts, hush payments, recorded calls that would raise half the city's elite to the ground. But I wasn't here for her enemies. I was here for her backup plan. Hidden behind a false panel was her living will. She updated it every quarter, paranoid that the vultures would circle too soon. In the latest version, Ethan got nothing if she died while he was still legally married to someone else, which is why he needed to marry me instead. A buffer to inherit my share if she died before our wedding could be annulled. He thought he was so clever. He thought I'd be his docile shield again. He forgot I learned from the best. I took the will. I took the USB drive marked with a red dot, the real crown jewel containing transactions that would convict half her board for fraud. Then I left the study exactly as I found it. Back in my apartment, Ethan was waiting in bed, half asleep. He rolled over when I slipped under the sheets. He pressed his mouth to my throat, hungry and sloppy. I let him. For the last time, I let him pretend I was still the boy who'd chase him across state lines. I thought I'd feel sick. Instead, I felt clean. This is what no one tells you about revenge. It doesn't taste like poison or fire. It tastes like freedom, bitter and bright. It tastes like knowing the worst parts of yourself have finally outrun the cages other people built for you. I lay awake all night, his breathing shallow against my shoulder. And when dawn broke, I knew what had to happen. Today, I will give Victoria back her kingdom, in ruins. Today, I will give Ethan the future he deserves, in a prison cell. Today, I will give myself the one thing neither of them could ever own, a self no longer bound by their pity or poison. By tonight, all three of us will be free. The morning I decided to end it all, the city outside my window looked cleaner than it ever had, like someone power washed the filth off the skyline just for me. Ethan was still snoring softly, sprawled across my sheets like he owned the place, like he owned me. Victoria, miles away in her fortress of rotting power, was probably whispering threats into her nurse's ear, trying to find new ways to pull my strings. But today, their strings snapped. I started with Ethan. I made him breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh squeezed juice. He looked up, bleary-eyed, when I set the tray on the bed. Trying to fatten me up before we run off together, he joked, his voice thick with that smug warmth I used to mistake for love. Eat, I said gently. He did. Between mouthfuls, he asked if I'd booked our tickets, if I'd packed my passport, if I'd checked Victoria's account for the last transfer. He didn't see me slip his phone from the nightstand and thumb through his messages. There it was, a text to her lawyer. Confirm offshore arrangement once Sam signs prenup. He was going to marry me, drain my payout, then vanish, just like he did last time. I watched him swallow the last bite. I kissed his forehead. He smiled, trusting as a child. That was the last time he'd ever look at me without fear. Next was Victoria. I left Ethan dozing off his breakfast wine and drove to her penthouse USB drive and forged paperwork hidden in my coat pocket. Her security didn't stop me. They never did. I was still the loyal caretaker to them, still the man who brushed her hair while she cursed the body that betrayed her. She was in the sunroom, slumped in her wheelchair, glaring at the stock tickers scrolling across the mounted TV. I stood behind her, just out of reach of her dead fingers, and whispered, "Your empire's mine now." She flinched ever so slightly. "You can't even imagine what you're stealing, Samuel." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm stealing," I said. I circled to face her. Saw the terror she couldn't hide anymore. "I'm stealing your deathbed, the stage where you get to be the tragic, pitied queen who lost everything except her loyal servant." I leaned closer until I could feel her breath shudder against my lips. "I'm not your servant anymore." She tried to scream for her nurse. I pressed a finger to her lips. "Quiet, Victoria. Listen." I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Ethan confessing over pillow talk that he'd forged her signatures, siphoned her funds, and planned to bury her once the marriage payout cleared. Her face crumpled, horror blooming under her skin like rot in a peach. "He loves me," she rasped. Number he loves himself. Always has. I slipped the forged will onto her lap. "Sign this power of attorney. It's the only way your name survives the collapse coming tonight." She shook her head, proud, royal, decaying to the very end. So I played my last card. I flicked my phone screen again and showed her a video feed, a hidden nanny cam I'd set up in my bedroom. Ethan, choking, vomiting, clutching the bed sheets where I'd left him to die. Digital poison, Victoria. Nothing lethal. Just enough to ruin his stomach lining for a week. The paramedics will find the residue and the forged bank accounts. He'll confess to everything while begging for a doctor. She stared at me, horror giving way to a flicker of admiration. You're just like me. No, I said, my voice calm and final. I'm worse, because I won't die with regrets. She signed. Her signature is a trembling ghost across expensive paper. I kissed her forehead one last time. This time, no tenderness, only farewell. I called the paramedics for Ethan on my way out, told them he'd overdosed. By the time they arrived, the USB was already in the hands of a reporter I'd cultivated for months under a fake name. The scandal would break within the hour. Hale Enterprises, rotten to the bones. Bribes, fraud, offshore theft, all tied neatly to Victoria's throne in Ethan's name. I walked out of that penthouse and didn't look back. I didn't flinch when the paramedics brushed past me. I didn't break stride when my phone vibrated with Ethan's desperate, pain-choked voicemails. I was already somewhere else, a version of myself neither of them could cage. I thought freedom would taste like fireworks. Instead, it tasted clean, cold, like the first deep breath after you stop drowning. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't feel righteous. I felt whole. At midnight, I stood on a pedestrian bridge overlooking the river that splits this city in two. The rich on one side, the ruins on the other. My phone buzzed with news alerts. Victoria Hale's empire in shambles. Her CEO seat frozen, pending federal investigation. Ethan Hale in custody, ranting about conspiracies no one would believe from a pretty boy whose charm couldn't buy him bail. I closed my eyes, letting the city noise wash over me. I saw them both behind my eyelids. Victoria, weak and furious in her golden cage. Ethan, sobbing into a stainless steel toilet, tasting the same abandonment he gifted me years ago. I didn't smile. There was no gloating left in me, only the quiet, sacred relief of a man who cut the final chain binding him to the worst versions of love. I turned off my phone and dropped it into the river. Tomorrow the world will learn my name as the whistleblower who toppled two monsters. But tonight I am nobody's caretaker, nobody's fool. Tonight I belong to no one but myself. 2 days after I dropped my phone into the river, I woke up in a cheap hostel on the other side of the city. No penthouse windows, no silk sheets, just the hum of traffic bleeding through cracked plaster walls. And for the first time in years, I didn't dream of Victoria's voice or Ethan's skin against mine. Freedom has no witnesses. That's how I knew I was finally tasting it. I watched the scandal unfold on a borrowed burner phone. Every hour, a new headline. Victoria Hale's empire collapses under fraud investigation. Ethan Hale in protective custody, expected to turn on co-conspirators. Every article dripped with the same schadenfreude the city used to reserve for failed politicians and dead pop stars. I didn't bother reading the comments. I knew what they'd say. How could they fool so many for so long? How could a caretaker become an informant? How could love be so dirty, so violent, so transactional? None of them understood. They'd never been owned the way I had been. On the third morning, my reflection caught me off guard. I was brushing my teeth in the hostel's shared bathroom. Yellow tile, flickering fluorescent tube overhead. And I realized I was smiling. Not the polite mask I wore for Victoria's board, or the plastic grin Ethan loved to kiss off my mouth. A real smile. Crooked, small. Mine. I spat out the toothpaste and laughed. It echoed too loudly. I didn't care who heard. Victoria's lawyer tried to reach me. So did a dozen reporters, hungry for the tragic caretaker's tell-all. I ignored them all. Let them claw at the ruins. Let them print whatever makes them feel righteous. I owed no one the courtesy of an explanation. By the end of the week, Victoria's assets were frozen. The mansion where she built her personal kingdom was now crawling with federal investigators. I knew the exact hallway they'd search first, the sunroom where she used to watch me through half-closed eyes and pretend I couldn't feel the weight of her pity disguised as devotion. She was still alive, a fact that surprised me more than it should have. Some part of me assumed the shame would finish what the disease couldn't. But no, she was too stubborn to die on anyone's schedule but her own. A nurse leaked a photo to the tabloids. Victoria Hale in a hospital bed, tubes and wires like roots keeping her alive, her stare vacant. Some people called her a tragic figure, a once mighty queen undone by her own greed. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. As for Ethan, the last thing I heard was that he was negotiating a plea deal. He named every co-conspirator except me. Part of me wondered if, in that concrete holding cell, he still pictured me as his final, unburned bridge to survival. He'd never understand. I wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't worth it. He was just another orphaned ghost drifting behind me. On the 10th day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat in a coffee shop window with a paperback novel and let the city pass without caring who saw me. No title, no hidden agenda, no calculating gaze scanning for betrayal. Just me and words on a page. A woman at the next table struck up polite small talk. She said she liked my smile. She asked what I did for work. I told her the truth for once. I'm between things right now, I said, and I laughed because it felt honest. At night, I walked the riverfront where I drowned my old phone. I wondered if some scavenger would fish it out one day, if my last voicemails would whisper my ghost to the wind. It didn't matter. I stood on the same pedestrian bridge and felt the same breeze I did the night everything burned. Only this time, I didn't feel the urge to vanish with it. You might ask what revenge really buys a man like me. Money? Number I wired half the hush fund from Victoria's offshore account to a children's charity, the same one she once used as a tax shelter. I kept just enough to disappear if I wanted. Justice? Number the law would devour Victoria and Ethan at its own pace, and the city would move on to its next scandal. Justice was too small a word for what I did. What revenge really bought me was silence. The quiet inside my head when no one's lies echo anymore. The calm that settles in the space where guilt used to gnaw. The freedom to wake up and decide who I am every single day. I don't forgive them. That's the honest truth. I don't forgive myself either. Not yet. Some nights I still feel the phantom weight of Victoria's head against my chest, the familiar heat of Ethan's breath at my neck. But the difference now is this. I don't belong to those ghosts. They belong to me. They remind me of what I survived. They remind me not to sleepwalk back into anyone else's cage. Someday, maybe I'll leave this city for good. Find a place with no memories in the walls, no echo of old footsteps behind every corner. Or maybe I'll stay and build a life right here among the ruins. Both futures feel possible. Both futures feel mine. For now, I'm content to sit in this coffee shop window, turning pages no one forced into my hands, nodding politely to strangers who see nothing but a quiet man with a crooked smile. They don't know my story, and I don't owe them the ending. For support, do like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.